is indeed well. All is indeed well, even with the news of the world. And that's what I'm sharing with you today, is this idea that when conditions and circumstances and appearances might try to tell us otherwise, everything is indeed all is well. All is indeed well in any given moment, because God is in all. I'll start with a story this morning. There was a top marketing agency working on an online campaign, and everybody working on this team are like the best of the best. They are outstanding in their field. They are well known, all these things. And it became lunchtime, and the IT person, the tech person, and the designer, one of the designers, the web designers, and their manager were all going to go to lunch. So they're going out their offices. They turn down the hallway, and there's a genie's lamp sitting in the corner. And one of them says, "Gosh, that's kind of interesting." And somebody else says, "Well, maybe it's a prop. Maybe it's a prop from the video shoot. Maybe somebody dropped it, left it." And kidding around, the designer picked it up and says, "Well, I'm just going to see, just for fun, what's going to happen." And starts rubbing the lamp, and poof, this genie pops out of the lamp and says, "You get 3 wishes. I see there's 3 of you here, so I'm going to grant each one of you 1 wish." And they're all a little dumbfounded and kind of backing up a little bit, but like, okay, we'll play along. We're creative. We're going to go along with this. And so the IT gal, she says, "I've always wanted to visit the Amazon rainforest and learn like hands-on ways to help protect them and make things more sustainable. I want that. That's what I want." And poof, she disappears, and this long voice from far away says, "Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful here. This actually worked." And so the marketing, the designer says, "Oh my gosh, I've always wanted to live in a little chalet in the Swiss Alps and write children's books, empowering books for children. And that's what I want." And poof, off she goes. And you hear this voice, "Oh my gosh, it's snowing. It's so beautiful." And the genie looks at their manager and says, "Well, there's 1 wish left. What would you like?" And she says, "We've got a deadline for this project. I want both of them back in the office after lunch." So it may seem, and oftentimes does seem, that we are going along in our lives and we're moments like we have momentum and we seem to have a clear view of what our purpose is and what we're here for and what we want to do and what our souls truly want. And then something comes along and yanks us back or throws us off or pulls us back into the familiar and the mundane and the what's safe for us. We make plans and God laughs, right? We've heard that old joke. Our judgment, when that usually happens, our often instantaneous judgment is, why did this happen to me? I was going along and everything was great. What's going on? We kind of drop into victim mode, like this is happening to me and oh my gosh, the sky is falling and everything's falling apart now that there's been this bump in the road. But what if these moments were an indication that this is exactly where God is moving us towards, directing us to our next step? I'm old enough to remember, and probably some of you, many of you are too, maybe no offense, but do you remember the song, "I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing"? It was actually a marketing campaign that became a huge international sensation. And the story behind it was that there was a marketing person, friends with a songwriter, and they were on a trip and they got hung up in the airport, in the Shannon Airport in Ireland. And they got stuck with a layover and people were not happy and all kind of things. Usually when flights get canceled and can't be redirected and so forth. And a gentleman named Bill Backer, who was worked for the advertising agency, was the next morning, they all had to sleep in the terminal, and people are piled up in chairs and on their luggage and so forth. They woke up the next morning and he saw a bunch of people just laughing and joking and having a good time, and saw that they were drinking Coca-Cola. And he wrote down this line, "I'd like to buy the world a Coke." And he talked to his friends and Roger Cook's songwriting partner, Roger Greenaway, and they took a melody from a previous jingle, another jingle that was actually originally called True Love and Apple Pie. And they reworked the song into the Coca-Cola radio, and it was a radio jingle at first. And the radio jingle made its debut in February of 1971, and people started calling in, like, what is this song? What is this song? I want to hear this song. I was probably one of those. I was like, wow, what is this? And it became so popular that the songwriters recreated it and revised it and added 3 verses and removing the product references to Coca-Cola, turning it into a full-length commercial song. And it was an international, as I said, international hit, if you remember that. So the thing was, this universal theme of peace and harmony and universal oneness that resonates with all of us in that place, that was the message. And it was, interestingly enough, it was attached initially just a jingle to a product, and then became this international sensation. And there's a whole bunch of things around this, like first times of happening. So Spirit was involved in this situation that seemed like, the airport's closed, we got to sleep in the terminal, et cetera, et cetera. And they were open. The creators were open to a possibility. That's what we're working on here, is being open to that guidance when something goes awry or goes sideways or doesn't especially go the way we would prefer that it goes, that we lean into that place of knowing that Spirit is present. So what's interesting about this is we know in this teaching that Spirit is ever evolving. It is never stagnant. And so there's always this kind of discovery and a worldwide sensation, and then I don't want to call it a backlash because it's not, but there's this thing, this cycling around that is moving us to a next level of expression of God. So we think about Coca-Cola and we think about it's a sugary soft drink and it's not good for us, and too much of a good thing, right? So in 2015, and there's a whole history of different versions of this incredible groundswell of popularity around this particular song. So from 1971 to 2015, there's all this going on. Of course, Coca-Cola and the Cola Wars and all those kinds of things taking place in between that. There was a group of doctors from the Center for Science in the Public Interest who did a counter video, and they did an altered version of I'd Like to Teach the World to Sing, talking about, it was doctors and dentists and patients that were struggling with obesity-related illnesses and diseases like type 2 diabetes and hypertension and tooth decay. And near the end of it, what they did is they showed Pepsi, Coca-Cola, and Mountain Dew in beverage cups named obesity, diabetes type 2, and tooth decay in the respective typefaces, the fonts of those logos of those companies. And their message, the campaign was named Change the Tune. So we see throughout history, the good one is the invention of the automobile and the inspiring, the story of that Henry Ford had, and the creativity in engineering and evolution and in transportation and how it became this worldwide thing. And all the years later, what brought us to motels, motor lodges, fast food, and all of the things that we do from our cars nowadays. And there's good and there's what we might say not so good, and maybe even some people might say evil in that. But what we know and affirm is that in all of this, God is in the middle of it. God is in the idea. God is in the inspiration. God is in that place that is bringing us to an ever greater expression of itself through us and as us. So Dr. Ernest Holmes says, no harm can come to you when you know God is at the center of everything. This knowledge will protect you from all evil. I'll talk about evil in a minute. Evil is as night before the onrushing light of your consciousness. It is as darkness dissipated by the sun of your faith. It is as fire extinguished by the waters of your spirit. So the conditions, the circumstances, and the appearances, it appears as if something has pulled us off course. But what it is really, it's just in those moments we react and we forget. We forget where God is. And so what is our practice? Our practice is to reframe. Our practice is to look at it not with judgment as best we can, but look at it as information. If we return to that place when we get knocked off course, that place where the master teacher said we become like children again. And what are children? They are curious. There is a sense of wonder. They want to know what's going on. Children don't have that sense of judgment of right or wrong or good or bad or this is healthy or not healthy or whatever it is. There is a sense of what is this about? And that's where we return to in our practice. And by the way, evil, if you spell it backwards, is L-I-V-E, live or live, however you want to pronounce it in whatever context you want to do that with. And I think that what we call evil, and this is my understanding of it, where I am in my life with all the things that are going on in the world, the news of the world that we have access to, so we're inundated. We have access to it all the time. What I think evil is truly is the deep, unconscious, mostly unconscious belief in separation from our source. And when that deep wound of separation from source gets outpictured into a sense of separation from each other, that is the heart and soul, even though it seems soulless, that is the belief underneath war and greed and corruption and all of that, is that sense of there's not enough, I'm lacking, I don't have, I've got to fill this place in me. Each one of us is here, alive on this planet, in this specific time, to contribute something to the greater expression of God. Every single one of us. In The Secrets of Divine Love, it's a spiritual journey through the heart of Islam. Excuse me, sorry about that noise. I want to read you this from the tradition of Islam. A traveler was wandering through a town searching for hope when he came across a crippled beggar, then an old woman getting beaten, and then a funeral of a baby. He fell into a spell of pain, distraught from the despair, famine, and destruction that he witnessed. He ran out of town into the vast silence of the desert at night and screamed to God, "Oh, why, God? Why is there so much pain? Why is there so much oppression, so much injustice? Why don't you do something?" The man was crying as he was punching the desert floor with his fist, crying over and over again, "Why don't you do something, Lord?" The man dug his knuckles into the hot sand and screamed until he finally fell into an ecstatic state. And it was then that he heard the divine reply, "I did do something. I created you." I want to pull out one of the paragraphs from the reading from Science of Mind magazine, and that's from Reverend Dr. Michelle Medrano, where it says, "The stories that particularly trigger us are the same ones that can show us where we might want to use our prayerful consciousness. The trigger shows us that there is an aspect of us that is not currently able to see the presence of God in that condition. And as long as that is so, we are not living from our truest oneness." So we turn within and we ask, as I said, with curiosity and a sense of wonder, what is mine to do? What is Spirit asking of me? What does Spirit want to express through me? We are here in this time of the appearance of tremendous chaos and division and upheaval. And if we just think about that for a moment, we are here. We are here to do something to contribute to that greater expression of peace and joy and love, especially love. Many years ago, I was trying to remember when this happened. It was probably about 15 or so years ago, and I was working with somebody who was pretty new at personal coaching, and basically asked me if I wanted to be a guinea pig, and I said sure. And we had worked together for a few weeks, and in my awareness and my meditation, and I don't remember the context of it, but there was this drop-in question that shook me to my core. And what I heard was, who would I be without my music? Who would I be? What would I be? What would I be doing if I were not a musician? If I didn't think that that was my purpose. And it scared me and it shook me. But I leaned into it, and I was encouraged, and I found support in leaning into that question. But for a long time, I was like, well, what would happen? What would I do? Who would I be? And that at that time was the most important question that I could have asked myself and been asked, because it brought me deeper into a journey. And this was before I started my my practitioner training. And so I was really kind of on shaky ground with it, because I've been a musician my entire life. But it brought me into that place of, well, what is this about? What is this about? What am I supposed to be doing? And for the next 15 or so years, I continued my practitioner studies, and I continued into, of course, ministerial studies, and all of the things that transpired in my life to where I am to this day, to going through COVID, going through this global thing where it says, initially was the thought came in was, we might not be here in 6 months. We might not be here in 2 months. We might not be here next week. And the reevaluation, the global reevaluation for a lot of people that took place, which I think was a tremendous gift. Didn't look like it. It looked like madness and chaos and all kinds of things. And God was in the middle of all of it, guiding us in all of the ways that it was doing for each one of us to reevaluate what was most important and what we were here to be and to do. And I look at that moment now, 15 or so years ago. I didn't know where God was in that moment. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know myself at a level of understanding of myself as an expression of God that I do now. So that shift, or that acknowledgement, or that embracing, that engaging with, that understanding, that accepting, all of this brought me, all these years, to that place of an acceptance, leaning into it, saying, no matter what happens, and a lot has happened, no matter what, God is in the middle of all of this, and it is leading, always guiding, always pointing in the direction to the next greatest expression of who I am, of who you are. It's crazy sometimes when I look at, and I'm just still processing oh my gosh, what's gone on? And I go, but look at where the dots are getting connected. Look at how it led me here. Look at to this event and this thing, and where this opened up, and this piece of healing, and this piece of expansiveness. There is a purpose for all of us, as I said. And we may think it's one thing, like I always thought that music was going to be it. And it still is, but where I am now with it is such a tremendous gift. Rick Warren, in his book, The Purpose-Driven Life, he talks about focusing. going into meditation and focusing on purpose, on awareness, on what is mine to do, and narrowing that focus down. And he says, the power of focusing can be seen in light. Diffused light has little power or impact, but you can concentrate its energy by focusing it. With a magnifying glass, the rays of the sun can be focused to set grass or paper on fire. When light is focused even more as a laser beam, it can cut through steel. There is nothing quite as potent as a focused life, one lived on purpose. The men and women who have made the greatest difference in history were the most focused. If you want your life to have impact, focus it. Stop dabbling. Stop trying to do it all. Do less. Prune away even good activities and do only that which matters most. Never confuse activity with productivity. And that was a huge message for me. That's been all along. Because what I discovered in all of these years since that shake-up moment was that workaholism and perfectionism are defense mechanisms. They're coping mechanisms. And all they do is reinforce the belief that we're separate from our source, that we're not worthy of God's love, and we're separate from each other. But the very fact that we are all here in this time, in this space, in this world, the fact that we are here and we are breathing, existing, means that we are already gifted. We are already outstanding just by being here. We've already received a tremendous gift. Our spiritual worth is not quantified by our current conditions. Our current conditions are simply a reflection of what we believe ourselves to be. At heart, we are love, period. And whether we are standing on a hilltop singing about oneness with a Coca-Cola in our hands or something else, or we're standing on a street corner, or we're in an office building, or we're standing by the ocean, no matter where we are, God is. No matter what is happening, whether it's a weather catastrophe or war or anything else that's going on in this world of apparent confusion and division, we have a space. We are the space. We are that place where God shows up. The decision and the practice to go immediately into saying, affirming, God is present in this too, allows us to have the faith that all is actually working in our favor, for our highest good and for the greatest expression of God itself, as beauty, as truth, as peace, power, harmony, light, and most importantly, love. And that, knowing that we are made of love, we are lovable, we are loving, and we are love, that is what allows each and every one of us to unlock the unlimited potential to be outstanding in our field. Let's take this into spiritual mind treatment. So let's allow ourselves to just move into that quiet space where we take a conscious breath. Where we turn our focus and our attention to the presence We recognize and acknowledge the presence of that one infinite intelligence, that unconditionally loving presence. And we can speak in our own minds into that place of saying, I recognize God, and I recognize God in me. I open that door or the crack of light that says, yeah, right here, right now. And we breathe in that truth. We breathe in that sense that we are never separate from that. We cannot be separate from it because it lives and breathes and moves and has its being in us at all times. And so I know and I affirm and I call forth and I claim and I proclaim that everyone in this treatment, included in this treatment, and it is everyone, everything, every being, that we are here because we are so very, very loved. And when we know that we are loved, everything, absolutely everything is possible. So that any condition, any circumstance, any appearance of disruption or pain or anything we might call evil is simply seen as what it is. It is information. Information pointing us, ever pointing us back to knowing there is an answer. There is a solution. And there is always a new way of seeing ourselves as the individualized expressions of the One. And so it is with overflowing gratitude that I can release these words into that law that only knows yes. As I know this for myself and every being, I can let it go, I can let it be, and therefore say thank you, Mother, Father, loving God, thank you, God, for knowing this truth. We affirm it by saying, and so it is.